In this video, we're going to be learning about solving word problems with fractional equations. Alright, so this problem says the numerator of a fraction is 12 more than the denominator. If the value of the fraction is 3 less than the value of the denominator, what is the value of the fraction? Okay, so we're going to start out by declaring our variables. So the first sentence says the numerator of a fraction is 12 more than the denominator. So let's make our denominator our x value. So our denominator is x. So what does that make our numerator? Based on the first sentence, it says 12 more than the denominator. So in algebraic form, that would be x plus 12. So the next sentence says the value of the fraction is 3 less than the denominator. So we already know the denominator is x. So the value of the fraction is going to be 3 less than x. So x minus 3. And it asks us to find what is the value of the fraction. So what we're looking for is the value of the fraction. Alright, so let's go ahead and write out our equation now. So our fraction in algebraic form is x plus 12 over x is equal to x minus 3. Right? Because x minus 3 is the value of the fraction. And we know x plus 12 is the numerator and x is the denominator. Alright, so our goal here is to solve for x, and then we can get the value from that. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of that fraction. So we're going to multiply both sides by x. So we're going to have x plus 12 over x times x is equal to x minus 3 times x. Alright, so the x's cancel out on the left side, and we're left with x plus 12. On the right side, we need to do the distributive property, so we need to multiply the x times everything in the parentheses here. So x times x is x squared, and x times 3 is 3x. So that's what we have now. So we can see that we're going to have a quadratic equation here. And when we solve quadratic equations, we always want to set them equal to 0. So to do that, let's move the x plus 12 to the other side. So let's subtract x plus 12 from both sides of the equation. Alright, so when we're subtracting a group of things like this, we need to make sure we distribute the negative sign throughout the entire group. So what we end up with is 0 equals x squared minus 3x minus x minus 12. Alright, so from there we can collect like terms. So we have this 3x and this x. So we end up with 0 equals x squared minus 4x minus 12. Alright, so now we need to try to factor this to solve for x. So we know that it's going to factor into the form x plus a times x plus b, because our first term is x squared. So what we're trying to find is a and b. So we know that a times b has to be equal to negative 12. So a times b has to be equal to negative 12. And we know that a plus b has to be equal to negative 4. So how I usually start out with this is I try to find factors of negative 12. Alright, so we have plus or minus 1 and 12. I'm just going to write plus or minus because one of these numbers has to be positive and the other one has to be negative. But it can go either way for right now because we're not sure yet. Plus or minus 3 and 4, and plus or minus 6 and 2. Alright, so now what we're going to do is look through these numbers and try to find two numbers that add up to 1. Or, sorry, they add up to negative 4. So is there any way we can get 1 and 12 to add up to 4? No. So this one's not going to work. So let's rewrite our list here. 1 and 12 plus or minus 3 and 4 plus or minus 6 and 2. And we're looking for two numbers that add up to negative 4. Alright, so 1 and 12 are not going to work. Positive 3 and negative 4, or negative 3 and positive 4, we can't get those to add up to negative 4, so those aren't going to work. But 6 and 2 have a difference of 4. So, if we have two options here, negative 6, positive 2, or positive 6, negative 2. So we need to get negative 4, so this one's not going to work. It's got to be negative 6, positive 2. So that means that we can factor this equation. So 0 equals x squared minus 4x minus 12. We can factor that into 0 equals x minus 6 x plus 2. Alright, so now that we've factored, we should be able to solve for x. So we know that if x minus 6 times x plus 2 is equal to 0, then one of those quantities has to be equal to 0. So how we solve this is we set each one equal to 0 separately. So x minus 6 is equal to 0, and x plus 2 is equal to 0. So we're going to come up with two solutions. So to solve this one, we add 6 to both sides, and we get x equals 6. Solve this one, we subtract 2 from both sides, and we get x equals negative 2. Alright, so now that we have those, you might think you're done, but remember that the problem actually asked us for the value of the fraction. So we need to go back and plug those into the value of the fraction. So, the value is x minus 3. So we need to plug each one of these into that equation. So we'll have two values. So when x is equal to 6, the value is 6 minus 3, which is equal to 3. And when x is equal to negative 2, the value is negative 2 minus 3, which is equal to negative 5. So our answers are actually 3 and negative 5 for this problem.